This is a recording of this year's Virtual Residency Fair. We'd like to take the time to thank the programs that volunteered their time to present to this year's applicants. This year's PM&R Scholars Virtual Residency Fair is supported by PM&R Recap and Ultrasound Guidance. PM&R Recap is the leading resource for your physiatry board preparation, clinical preparation, audition rotations, and beyond. PM&R Recap offers 35 hours of review videos, hundreds of review questions, and oral board cases to help you become the best physiatrist that you can be. Head to pmnrrecap.com to learn more. Ultrasound Guidance is the innovative new online ultrasound learning platform that gives you instant access to expert instruction. With rapid scans and complete scans of every joint and peripheral nerve, Ultrasound Guidance is the perfect way to jumpstart your MSK ultrasound learning. Visit ultrasoundguidance.com to learn more.
This year, we are number 8 in the nation. We're top ranked in Pennsylvania, and our faculty are national and world leaders in the field. So basically, a few years ago, they decided to create their own program just at Moss because I think they wanted to control the education a little bit more and kind of create residents that were just coming from Moss so they could call them their own. And these are lovely classes. Our leadership is Dr. Siegel is our program director down there in the corner, and our assistant program director is Dr. Barsikowski. They're both brain injury trained, and they both work a full clinical job, but then they are also our program directors and make sure that we have a great residency and a great experience as residents. And we have to shout out to our program coordinator, Casey, who keeps us all organized. She is awesome and keeps everything running smoothly for us. And this is our mission statement, which is very lengthy, so I'm not going to read it to you, but essentially they just want to make sure that the residents come out of the residency with a great training in rehab and become leaders in the field. And how do we do that? By our fantastic faculty. I'd say many of our faculty have fellowship training, so they're very good at what they do. We also have, like I said, leaders in the field, and you get a lot of education coming from lots of different places. So it's really varied education, and they're fantastic. And what also makes it great is the resources that we have at Moss. So notably, we have the Moss Rehab Research Institute, which has PhDs, postdocs, MD PhDs, statisticians that do kind of the heavy neuro rehab research. So if you want to get involved with that as a resident, if you're passionate about research, that's definitely possible. We're also model systems of care for brain injury. We have both a gait and motor control analysis lab. We do intrathecal therapies, and we have a new institute that opened up within the past year or so it's called the Moss Rehab Institute for Brain Health, which is for first responders and veterans who had brain injuries. And then we also have a whole bunch of robots, which are awesome to be able to see the therapist using with our patients on the floors and in the outpatient setting. So we're kind of on the cutting edge with a lot of rehab care here. We also have some fellowships in-house, one ACGME one, which is the brain injury medicine. And that's also, the program director is also Dr. Siegel. And then we have 3 non-ACGME fellowships. This past year, we had a spasticity fellow and a brain injury fellow. And I think having them around was a great addition to our education because, you know, they're just coming out of residency themselves and they have an idea of like the job market and how they navigate going through fellowships. So it's kind of like having an extra colleague, but then also an extra teacher because they're able to kind of pass on the information that they're learning at the time. And then just to touch on the merger as a, you know, briefly. So Einstein used to always train residents. They have been doing it for ages and lots of different residency programs, but obviously merging with Jefferson Health means that we are now part of an even bigger health system. They have their own med school, they have their own PM&R department and residency, and they have their own fellowships as well. And I think it's kind of benefits us because it really just gives us more opportunities for electives and kind of more connections throughout the city and the PM&R world. Then down to the nitty-gritty of our actual residency program. So we are 8 residents per class. It's an advanced program, so that means you do your intern year elsewhere, but there is the option for 5 residents to do their internal medicine prelim year at Einstein if you want to stay in the area and just stay with the same hospital system. Where do we rotate? Mostly Moss Rehab Hospital, which is up in Elkins Park in North Philly. But we also rotate at Moss Rehab we have a smaller unit down at the Einstein main campus. We do consults in Einstein itself. We do some of our rotations down at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which is downtown Philly. We have rotations at Einstein Montgomery, Center One, and at the Brain Institute for Health as well. So we're kind of all over the city and in the suburbs too. So you probably need a car if you join our residency. In terms of specific rotations, PGY2, it's definitely a lot of inpatient rehab, heavy on the neuro rehab, stroke, spinal cord, but some comprehensive rehab as well, some mixed units. But we do like to get you a little bit of outpatient rehab experience with the clinics, as well as the Institute for Brain Health and doing consults. PGY3, we still do some inpatient rotations. We have a brain injury unit, which we also have a disorders of consciousness program, which is pretty unique for a rehab hospital. So that's a great opportunity to learn kind of the ins and outs of that. We have an amputee service, and then you do electrodiagnostics, spend time in the gait lab, and we do our peds rotations. And you do have some time for electives too. And then PGY4, we're really kind of gearing for the outpatient world. Lots of outpatient neuro rehab, spend time with our interventional spine docs, musculoskeletal medicine, chronic pain rotation, as well as multiple months of electives. So you can really decide kind of what final things you want to learn before you're released into attendinghood. Then in terms of education, we've got didactics every Wednesday from 8 to 12. And those are protected time. So that means that the attendings are covering their own services at that time. So they're taking pages, they're writing the progress notes for those days. So you really get to focus on just learning during that time, which is great. Then we also have the added kind of lecture series of the sports and spine physicians put together lecture series that's kind of really focused on the MSK and spine care, and that's Tuesday mornings. And our block system is a 12-month block system where we hit each kind of unit of rehab. So you get to see it 3 times throughout your time in residency. So hopefully you'll learn it pretty well by the end. And one of my favorite parts of our education is the anatomy course. So with our friends down at Jefferson, we do a joint anatomy course for 8 weeks in August, and that just started this week. And it's part cadaver lab and part lectures. And it's one of my favorite parts of our education. It's really functional anatomy through the physiatric lens. And it's a great foundation to kind of keep learning from. Then one of the benefits for being in Philadelphia, where there are now 4 residency programs, we do have citywide training courses, which are really fun for us to learn and meet our other residents in different programs and learn from their attending. So you kind of get even more exposure to different approaches to things. So Moss Rehab, we host the gait and orthotics course, and then Jefferson and UPenn also host a course. And then what people really care about is call coverage. So we have in-house call, it's 24-hour, but you do have a post-call day. I would say very front-loaded, so PGY2s have the most call, but as it's set up now, it gets less and less. So as a 3, it's a lot less, and then as a 4, currently we don't take call. I would say call can be hit or miss to how tough it is, but I say I get some sleep almost every time that I'm on call, so it's not terrible. Then vacation days. You get 20 days of vacation, and you also get sick days independent of that. You get more freedom in terms of when you can go, obviously later in your training, just because when you're manning the floors, you have to make sure that floors are covered. But I feel like there hasn't been a ton of problems with people taking vacation when they want. And then CME days. This is one of the other major benefits. Dr. Siegel really wants the residents to, submit posters to conferences and attend them just because it's great for networking, building a career and making connections. And you're learning the whole time too. So they're approved on kind of a case-by-case basis, and you don't have to use vacation days to go to conferences, which is awesome. And then through Einstein, you actually have the ability to get quite a bit of money to help fund like your flights, your hotel rooms, any food that you're having at the conferences, things like that. So it's a nice added bonus. Then in terms of wellness, I know it's a big topic in a lot of residencies these days, but I do think that our Dr. Siegel and Dr. Barskowski do want to make sure that everybody's doing well outside of work. They understand that we all have lives and you need to be eating and sleeping and taking care of yourself to be a good doctor and be able to take care of other people. So they really make sure that everybody has time to take care of themselves, which is great. And then things that we do, we have a yearly resident retreat. We have a yearly event called Life Rolls On, which I'll talk about in a second. And we have socials with other residencies throughout the cities, going to happy hours, things like that. And then living in Philadelphia itself is awesome. There's a lot of major sports teams. The food is amazing. It's great art museums. A lot of musical artists come through here because it's a major city. There's so many theaters in downtown, and you have access to nature because, you will have a car. So you'll be able to get there if that's what you want to do. So just a plug because this is actually coming up this weekend. So it's Life Rolls On. It's a surfing event. It's an adaptive surfing event, basically for people with disabilities. We can get out onto adaptive surfboards with some pro surfers and ride some waves. And it's awesome because every year, like huge amounts of people come from Moss. It's residents, attendings, therapists, MAs, and you can see some of your patients there too. And it's just like a reminder that everybody that works at Moss really likes working with our population, and we do things outside of work to help people with disabilities who have had accidents, things like that, because we really care about it. Thanks. And here's our program quarters info and our Instagram there. So if you have any questions, I think we have Hector and Jim here, potentially, my other two co-chiefs, so we can try to answer any questions if you have any. I know we're kind of raced through that.
I think there's a question in the chat.
Oh yes, the chat, we were told. That's a mouthful of a name. Yes, it is. Okay, where are we? Hello, if you have the time, could you touch on the gait lab a bit more? Is it a full rotation? So yes, for us, so we call it the MCAL rotation, motor control analysis lab rotation, basically. And we have a full month as PGY3s, where you go in and you're watching people get evaluated for gait. They have the whole setup where you have like pressure mapping plates. That's what they're called, and video cameras at different angles, so you can really evaluate and they use EMGs to evaluate what is firing when and what is, messing with their gait. And then we also have Dr. Mayer, who does more upper limb motor control analysis, looking at EMGs of the hand and the arm. So yeah, anything to add, guys?
Yeah, I would just say it's definitely like one of the strong parts of our program. Really gives you the extra opportunity that some places don't have. They have all that expensive equipment, and then you get to work with like Eskenazi, who's a big name. He's done a lot in the field, so it's a good rotation.
Okay, and then hello, can I know whether your program is IMG friendly or not? Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. If you email Casey, she can let you know that information because I'm not really sure what goes into all that. Then next question is, how is the unconscious program? Like the disorders of consciousness program? Is that what you mean? Yes. And how long is it? So
Sorry.
yeah.
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes. So the Disorders of Consciousness program is just basically on our brain injury unit. So we have people who come in who have had slightly less severe brain injuries who need inpatient rehabilitation, but then we also have people who are in kind of a minimally conscious state and not interacting with the world quite as much. So it's just part of our normal brain injury rotation, which is 3 months for us as third years. All right, and then is there a STEP CK cutoff for applying? That I don't know. I would say just apply. I don't know if they do any filters or anything like that. And then could you talk more about the faculty and peer mentorship? When you start, you're paired up with a faculty member based on your interests at the time. And you're supposed to meet with them kind of within the first couple months to help you plan for your future. But if your interests change, like mine was an SCI doc because I thought I was going to go into SCI, but I basically found my own mentorship through my time at Moss. And so I really had one of the sports and spine attendings kind of be my mentor more in the end because I was applying for that. And then peer mentorship, it's really just a buddy system where we want to make sure that you're fitting in well and understanding how everything works. So yeah, that. Our interview is still virtual. Yes, I believe so. You mentioned that Moss Rehab has one of 30 model systems for brain injury. Is this similar to the model systems that's currently set up for SCI? Yes. It's basically a similar idea, just for brain injury rather than spinal cord injury. And I think Magee Rehab, downtown Philadelphia, part of Jeff, is an SCI model system. No? Is it not, Hector? You're shaking your head.
Yeah, so model systems are designations that rehab institutions get. They have to meet certain criteria as far as like how they're structured. Within the state of Pennsylvania, Moss is the only brain injury model system that I know of. Magee, some time ago, was a SEI designated model system. I don't believe they have that designation anymore, but all it is, it's just for rehabilitation hospitals who have, established programs that treat specific patient populations. In the case of Moss, it's a brain injury population. So they meet the criteria and they have the designation within like or to be called the brain injury model system.
And then what do you like most about Moss in our last 2 minutes? I like the leadership and the faculty. I feel like they, as we're kind of a new program, they really take our opinions into account when we think that rotations are good or need work or restructuring. And they're pretty fast at kind of making changes when they can see that things aren't working for residents. I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
Yeah, I would agree. And even if you're not, it's great for brain injury, but if you want something else, there are opportunities for pretty much anything. And now we're connected with Jeff, so that gives you a lot more opportunities too.
I would say like the complexity of the patients. I think in retrospect now, it's really important. I feel, that if I go work anywhere else, I'd feel comfortable taking care of any patient population just with the amount of exposure patients that we get.
Maybe last question. How was the transition from PGY1 to PGY2 at Moss? And what were the early didactics like? I don't know how much time we have now. If we get cut off, I
30 seconds. Yeah, go ahead.
30 seconds. It can be rough, but depending on what type of intern year you have, you're learning a whole new computer system, and it's set up basically an attending and a resident. So it's not like you have like a senior on your team anymore. So it's kind of you doing everything. So it can be a lot of work, but you learn a lot really quickly.